Group 10 Masters, Part 3, Expanding Our Consciousness from Human to Soul to Spirit, video by Dr. Lisa Love. So this video is continuing our basic definition of the Masters as put forward in the book Letters on Occult Meditation by Alice Bailey. Again, we're continuing with the themes from video 2 that are talked about in that book on what is a master. And one is that the master is changing learning into wisdom here. So here's a quote from the book, and you're going to see the male pronoun. I've mentioned in every video where this appears that this was written 100 years ago. Everybody used the male pronoun. Don't let that trip you up. But to be true to the quote, I have to keep the male pronoun there. So, quote, "A master of the wisdom is he who has passed out of the hall of learning into the hall of wisdom. He is there graduated through its 5 grades and has transmuted lower mind into mind pure and unalloyed, has transmuted desire into intuition, and has irradiated his consciousness with the light of pure spirit. The discipline of meditation is the only way in which this can be accomplished." That's the letter September 14th, 1920, and the book Letters on Occult Meditation, page 260. So let's try and understand what is being said here. First of all, the Bailey books have this notion of 3 halls. One is the hall of ignorance, the next is the hall of knowledge, and the next is the hall of wisdom. Now, we've said in many of our videos, most of humanity lives in what we would call the hall of ignorance. They live primarily at this point on the emotional plane, full of desires. This is what we've called groups 1 through 6 in our model, live within this emotional plane. It's all about the world of the 5 senses. What's out there can make me happy. It's not about what's in here and the quest for God. They may have a religion where they worship God, but that's worship of that god or goddess or whatever is so they can get material stuff or happiness or a partner or something out there in the world of the 5 senses. God or the divine is external from them, and even when they get to an afterlife, they expect the afterlife to be full of more goodies that look pretty much the same as in this earth, and maybe they finally get some of the goodies they never got while they were living in our earth. That is what is known as the hall of ignorance, diluted by the 5 senses out there. But when we tread the spiritual path, which is kind of this individual here is trying to indicate that, we move on to what is called the plane of the lower mind underneath these little dots. And this is what we call those on the first and second initiations or expansions of consciousness are developing the lower mind. They are in the hall of knowledge here, which actually exists as well on the plane of the lower angel, which is the 3rd and 4th initiations, where we are now becoming more soul infused personalities. Here's the soul infusing the personality. But the master, we've learned in our previous videos, lives up here in the triad. This little triangle here, this is supposed to indicate a master, so to speak, who lives within the Atmic or spiritual, Buddhic, intuitional, and mental or monastic planes. So there are 5 grades they've mastered. 1 physical, 2 emotional, 3 mental, 4 intuitional, 5 the Atmic. They are Atmic, Buddhic, Manas. The triad has a point in Atma, Buddhi, Manas, Sat, Chit, Ananda, for those of you familiar with that tradition. And so the master is up here having mastered these 5 lower planes and is trying to touch the monad up here, move into the monadic plane. When we move into the monadic plane, though, we move out of the aura of our planet. This whole chart indicates our planet and all the levels of consciousness within our planet. So a master who is reaching the monadic plane can move out of our planetary life into other realms here. So the hall of wisdom is found within the spiritual triad, Atma Buddhi, and Manas. So we have that they have graduated the 5 grades, and they have transmuted lower mind, which is found in the plane of the lower mind, up into this. For the master, it would be this little dot right here, hidden underneath this little picture I have for the soul here. The monastic permanent atom is what these words in blue say if it wasn't covered up here. So the master is now working in the higher mind, has transmuted desire into intuition. Those emotional plane desires are now up on the Buddhic plane, where the person is operating through the Hall of Wisdom, through pure intuition, the permanent atom of the Buddhic plane. And the master has irradiated his consciousness with the light of pure spirit. And that means that the physical body is now irradiated with the spiritual life, the Atmic plane. And so these 3 levels have been brought up into this here. The physical up into the Atmic plane or spiritual, the emotional or plane of desire up into the intuitional or Buddhic plane, and the plane of the lower mind up into the mind pure and unalloyed, which is in the plane of the lower angel. So hopefully that helps you understand what's being talked about here. Now, the discipline of meditation is the only way this can be accomplished, and in the Bailey books, that has to do with samadhi, the practice of samadhi. And in the book Light of the Soul, written by Alice Bailey, it talks about Kriya Yoga here. Why is that important? Because we're trying to get the physical body itself to be irradiated with the consciousness and the light of pure spirit. So next we have the idea that there are 5 outer senses are merged into 2. And here's the quote from the book. A master of the wisdom is he who, through knowledge acquired by means of the 5 senses, has learnt that synthesis exists and has merged those 5 senses into the synthetic 2 that mark the point of attainment in the solar system. Through meditation, the geometrical sense of proportion is adjusted, the sense of values is clearly recognized, and through that adjustment and recognition, illusion is dispelled and reality is known. The practice of meditation and the inner concentration there brought about awakens the consciousness to the value and true use of form. Thereby reality is contacted and the 3 worlds can no more ensnare. And that is from Letters on Occult Meditation, pages 260 to 261. And you see my little addition there. Whenever you see LL in brackets, that's me making some comments and notes to myself. And that is, we are moving from 5 senses to 2. And I'm going to talk about this in a moment. What are those 2 senses? Are they spirit matter? Is it the unmanifest manifest? Let's go into this in a little more detail. So the majority of humanity we just mentioned is stuck in the emotional plane way down here. The master's way up here and striving to be up here. You can see how the master's consciousness is so far away from where the majority of humanity is. And that includes group 6 materialists, which are like right in here, which are those that are billionaires, and now we just had a trillionaire as I'm doing this movie, who again are really stuck on the world out there. The world of the 5 senses is what's important. They are not yet fully traveling the path, which is in the higher mental plane. They may have some of it, some glimpses of it, but they're not disciplined or dedicated to traveling this path so that they realize the soul right here, and especially the triad where the masters are at. So most of humanity is in the world of the 5 senses, but the master is not. The master has moved through the realm of 5 senses up into the mind, which is in a way like a 6th sense, and then up into the mind, which again is like a 6th sense, and then up into the triad here. So when you live up in the triad, you have a different experience of yourself, of God, so to speak, of life. And that is, you are focused increasingly on a synthesis that is merging everything into the two. Now, my assumption, because I'm not a master, I don't know for sure, but my assumption is that what we're talking about is the world is all about the unmanifest and the manifest, spirit and matter. You know yourself to be one with all that is. You know that spirit or the divine is within everything and everyone. That realization actually starts at the first initiation when we're down here. There are many initiations or expansions of consciousness in the Bailey system. There's actually 7 before we move off into this area up here, out of the ring past knot, so to speak, of our Earth, our planet. But the first one is where we have a sense of the oneness of all humanity, but we're not living it. We're not living fully as that spiritual being. Remember those 3 arrows we had in the previous slide where we are spiritualizing the physical, the emotions are now full of intuition, and the mind is full of the pure and unalloyed higher mind here. So the body of the master, the emotions and the mind are so purified that spirit shines right through. And it's my assumption more like you look out at the world as if it is the illusion and you see reality. You know that this is all just a play. It's all just Maya. It's all just Leela, as they say in the Eastern traditions here. And you're kind of watching the show, but you're not just watching it in a detached way. You're understanding the plan and you're watching how the plan is unfolding. But just like when you watch a movie or you read a book, you're not attached. Like I'm not the characters in that book. At times you may lose yourself and get overly absorbed in those characters. That's falling into the illusion. But for the most part, and for the master all the time, we could say you're not attached to the show, to the play. You're able to witness it and observe it and understand it. That's a distinction here. The master knows the plan, and you're working to help implement that plan according to divine wishes here. Now, the practice of meditation and inner concentration is what gets us there, which again brings us back to samadhi. And I have the whole Understanding Samadhi series. If it's not up on YouTube, sometimes I take it off of YouTube and keep it just for the Patreons on the Soul to Spirit Patreon account, patreon.com/soul to spirit. But I highly recommend that you get familiar with what samadhi is and what the Yoga Sutras are, because that is the training to get to these higher realms. Most of the meditations, if not all of the meditations given in the Discipleship and New Age books 1 and 2 are really for this level. But when we begin Soul Magic, or Treatise on White Magic, it says, Rule 1, we have to know samadhi. Those are the practices for the 3rd and 4th initiation that will eventually take us into mastery. And when that reality is contacted through the higher levels of samadhi, primarily Nirvikalpa samadhi, once we reach that, then we can no longer be ensnared in the 3 worlds of the mental, emotional, and physical planes. And here's another point in the checklist in Letters on Occult Meditation of what is a master. The master reaches the Father in heaven in meditation. Here's the quote. A master of the wisdom is he who knows the meaning of consciousness, of life, and of spirit. He can pass by the line of least resistance straight to the bosom of his Father in heaven. The approach to the line of least resistance, the direct path, is found through the practice of meditation. And when you see LL in brackets again, that's me putting something in here that reminds us that this is reaching the highest levels of samadhi, which is going to be Nirvikalpa samadhi, and then eventually Dharma Mega samadhi, where we're able to be fully established in our samadhi practice here. Now, when it says the bosom of his Father in heaven, this is referring to the Christian tradition. Bailey was first within that Christian tradition, and a lot of her book, Light on the Soul of the Yoga Sutras, her translation is in Christianized language. I've read other translations of the Yoga Sutras. I've read 4 others besides hers, and her Christian language you have to kind of reinterpret according to what it was like in original text. But the Father in heaven is similar to what you find in the Christian book of Revelation. I have a whole series of that in the Soul to Spirit channel, primarily on the Patreon account, but I also keep it within the YouTube channel, often for public viewing, because I think it's important for the public to understand that the book of Revelation is basically the opening of the chakras and samadhi practice. So when you reach the throne room in the book of Revelation, you reach the Father in heaven. It is the practice of Kriya Yoga and samadhi that is the book of Revelation, and that is true for the individual, for the group, and for our planet, as outlined there. So the master has to really know how to move in and out of samadhi at will. It's not something you do accidentally. There's such mastery of the mind and the 3 lower planes, the mental, emotional, and physical, that you are able to move consistently into the higher levels of samadhi. Sa Ananda, Sa Asmita, up here. Nirvikalpa Samadhi takes us up here, so that you are within that triad and able to get into those samadhis. Now, one of the things we learn in the Understanding Samadhi series on the Soul to Spirit channel is that samadhi at this level, the first samadhi start here on the plane of the solar angel. We have a sense of I-ness there. I am in samadhi. I am doing this meditation. But we lose that sense of I-ness when we move up here. That's a big distinction here. And that is something that I really recommend you watch those videos on Understanding Samadhi to help you understand this further. So a master of wisdom has become the 5-pointed star. Here's the quote. A master of the wisdom is he who has resolved himself from the 5 into the 3 and from the 3 into the 2. He has become the 5-pointed star, and when that moment is reached, he sees that star flash out above the one initiator and recognizes it in those of equal place to his. He has sanctified in the occult sense the quaternary, has used it as the foundation stone upon which to erect the Temple of Solomon. He has grown beyond the temple itself and has come to recognize it as limitation. He has withdrawn himself from its confining walls and has entered within the triad. He has done this always by the occult method, that is, consciously and with full knowledge of each step taken. He learns the meaning of each confining form, then he has assumed control and wielded the law upon the plane consistent with the form. He has then outgrown the form and has discarded it for other and higher forms. And that is the letter September 14th, again, pages 261, 262, letters on occult meditation. So let's go through this a little bit. So he's resolved himself from the 5 to the 3, from the 3 into the 2. Now, I am not exactly sure what that means, but we did have these 5 different levels, which are then the 3, I'm assuming, is the triad, and then the 2, which is going to be the spirit and unmanifest and manifest worlds down here. Unmanifest, manifest. That's my assumption here. But I do want to point out something that I have some awareness of, and that is he sees the star flash out above the one initiator and recognizes it in those of equal place to his. So here's what I know, because I've also trained in the Self-Realization Fellowship from Paramahansa Yogananda lessons and their training of Samadhi. And if you see in their symbol, you have here the 5-pointed star at the center. Now, because you're supposed to go through their training and you're not supposed to disclose it. I'm not going to disclose the details here of what all this symbol represents. I will simply say that these are stages that you factually experience in your meditation process of samadhi. You factually experience this, and then at some point you factually see the 5-pointed star flash forward here. This is not just symbolic of man as having a head and 2 arms and 2 legs and being the 5-pointed star. This is a literal experience that you have, and what you experience with that 5-pointed star is also described in those Kriya Yoga techniques in Self-Realization Fellowship. But having gotten those techniques from Self-Realization Fellowship and having reread Rays and Initiations and the rules for those taking the 3rd and 4th initiation in that book, I understood those rules in a totally different way. When they talk about the indigo blue, when they talk about the 5-pointed star in those rules, I was understanding things completely differently, having been trained more in Kriya Yoga techniques. So this to me is that the master has gotten to a point in samadhi practice where they can see and go through that 5-pointed star. And that star flashes forth at first, but then as they go through it, they reach those spiritual realms, and then as they come back out, they are able to sanctify the quaternary. This is Masonic language. Foster Bailey, Alice Bailey's husband, was trained in Masonry, and so the Bailey books sometimes have that Masonic language in it. The quaternary is the personality, and you're trying to erect the Temple of Solomon, which we could say is the soul. But then you want to grow beyond that temple, the soul, and get yourself up into the triad, because the soul, the temple of the soul, is itself a limitation. You want to get out of its confining walls up into the triad here. And that's where you get into the Sa-ananda, Sa-asmita samadhis, and eventually up into the Nirvalakapa and Dharma Mega Yoga samadhis. And you do this by an occult method. That means it's scientific. That means you know what to do. You know how to do it. It's not haphazard. It's not an experience you get by grace or accidental. Those types of things happen with those undergoing the 1st and 2nd initiations. It's something that you are trained in knowing how to do. Then you know how to do soul magic, or white magic as the Bailey books call it. On top of that initial samadhi practice, you're moving into the Savitarka and Savichara, which are the first samadhis up here in the plane of the solar angel. But that has that sense of I-ness in it. I am doing samadhi. And then eventually you lose that sense of I-ness. You are not the soul doing that. That's one of the reasons why the causal body of the soul is destroyed. It's also known as the ahamkara in the East. It's that sense of I am doing this. I, the personality, am doing all of this stuff. You're no longer the personality. You're no longer that individualized sense of I-ness as you get up into these higher levels of samadhi. Instead, you are more than that. And as you learn how to stabilize and do this kind of samadhi practice at will, and get up even to these higher realms at will, go through my Understanding Samadhi course and you'll get what these levels are like. Then you can do it consciously with full knowledge of each step you take. You know what you're doing. And then the soul magic or white magic part is, as you come out of it, because you can't live up here in Nirvalakapa Samadhi and function in this world. You're kind of out of the world, up in the throne room, up in heaven. You have to come back in the world. And as you do that, you have to learn how to work with the 3 forms of the lower world, the mind, the emotions, and the etheric physical body. And as you do it here, you can now take full control of your mind, including every thought you think. You can decide what thoughts you want to think consciously at will at all times. You understand speech and why it's so important to watch what you say. Those are the beginning rules for the first initiation, because up at this level of a master, your words matter a great deal because they manifest, they impact. So you have to control not only your speech, you have to control what you think, because even what you think can start to manifest on the subtle planes up here. You desire only that which is for the good of the whole, which is for the good of the plan. And your body is so purified, and your etheric body is so purified, that it can constantly hold the resonance with these higher realms into these lower realms. So you've outgrown the form, and you can actually at some point discard it for higher forms. You can say, I no longer wish to be incarnated in this world here, in this logos of our earth, and I'm going to move out of it. Now you can choose the path of earth service and stay here and try and serve, but you can also choose 6 other paths that take you out of our planet and its life altogether. The text continues with that particular point. Thus he has progressed always by means of the sacrifice and death of the form. Always it is recognized as imprisoning. Always it must be sacrificed and must die, so that the life within may speed ever on and up. The path of resurrection presupposes crucifixion and death, and then leads to the mount whence ascension may be made. In meditation, the value of the life and the confines of the form can be appreciated and known, and by knowledge and service can the life be set free from all that limits and trammels. Continuing that on pages 261 to 262. What are we talking about? We have to desire less and less these 3 worlds. And the way that we do that is we understand that they imprison the life, not only at the level of the triad, but the monad. Because when we reach the monadic level, this is the essential spark that keeps us within the confines of this planetary life. And the only way we're going to get out of the ring pass knot of our planetary life and its consciousness is we have to sacrifice our attachment to these 3 lower worlds and instead desire that life up here so much that we speed ever on and up here, which means we crucify even the soul, even the attachment to the plane of the solar angel and the mental plane that keeps us within the realm of the personality and the 3 lower worlds here, which is why it can seem so austere, those that are learning, especially as we move into the 4th initiation, which is the initiation of crucifixion, because so much of the life is interiorized in order to get into these higher samadhi levels here. And this isn't like going into a trance or doing channeling. Most channeling is either down here in the emotional plane, or those that are at the first initiation are involved in channeling more as well. Here, and Bailey has a whole section where she describes the different levels of channeling. I think there's 16 in Esoteric Psychology Volume 2, and it can become a real pitfall if you're on the path, but it's something that is natural for people to be attracted to at first. This is a whole different dynamic here. This is trying to abstract the mind. We start that in the abstract mind levels up here. It's not just you have thoughts that seem hard to understand. It's that you're abstracting the mind itself up into the spiritual triad here. And you're crucifying that sense of I-ness, that ahamkara, that causal body, egoic lotus, soul, whatever language we want to use for it now. And so as we do that, we experience life. We sacrificed all that must die, all those physical attachments, all that emotional attachment, drama and mess, all those attached to my ideas of what is truth and reality, etc., etc. All this we let go of. Remember those 3 arrows at the beginning of this video, so that we can primarily live within the realm of the triad, move up to the monad, be in spirit, and move unto ascension. Now, a lot of the books out there that talk about moving into ascension, they don't have the foggiest idea what they're really talking about. They see ascension kind of like a lot of people describe the book of Revelation as if we're beamed up, like in the Star Trek series, where we're beamed up into some other dimension, or where we're kind of semi-conscious or even unconscious as we go into some other dimension. That's not what ascension is here. It is a scientific occult practice done in meditation, where we understand life through samadhi practice, and we see how that life is confined in the form, especially of the 3 lower planes. We appreciate the form, we appreciate knowledge and service, but at the level of mastery, the knowledge that we're trying to impart is the knowledge of how to be free from all that limits and trammels us. We want to set free humanity from its enslavement within these 3 lower worlds. I'm just the physical body. I'm just my emotional desires in the realm of the 5 senses. I'm just my mind and all its entertaining thoughts here. We want to be free of all of that to know God, to know life, to know spirit. And the master, he or she, is attempting to free others of that confinement in the form that limits and trammels as well. And this is our final slide in this video. You are a benefactor of humanity. Quote, a master of the wisdom is one who has chosen to stay upon our planet to help his fellow men. All who attain the 5th initiation are masters of the wisdom, but all stay not and work as servers of the race. They pass to other work of greater or equal importance. To the general public, the significance of the term lies in the thought that they choose to stay and limit themselves for the sake of men who are pressing forward on the wave of evolution. Through meditation has the Great One reached his goal, and which is a thing not so oft comprehended. Through meditation, or the manipulation of thought matter, and by work on the mental bodies of the race, is the work carried on that aids the evolutionary process, and that's page 262. So let's outline a little bit of what we're talking about here. Again, there are many initiations. 1 and 2 happen on the plane of the lower mind. 3 and 4 happen on the plane of the solar angel. 5, the 5th initiation, is what the master of the wisdom has attained, taking them into the triad. And a master is typically somebody who stays to help humanity. They stay upon our planet to help humanity. What are they trying to help humanity understand? How to free themselves from the 3 lower worlds and the enslavement within the mind, the emotions, and the physical 5 senses. They want us out of the world of the 5 senses. But not all stay and work as servers of the race. Some reach, as I said before, into other realms outside of the confines of our planetary logos, or our Earth and its consciousness. And those are described in the Bailey book, Raise and Initiation. There are 7 paths. The masters who are still here on the earth are staying on the path of earth service, but they can go through what's called the 6th initiation, which is the initiation of decision, and decide to continue to stay on our earth and serve, or to move along 6 other paths, the 7th path being the path of earth service. So they can pass to other work of greater or even equal importance by going, for example, to the path of Sirius and other paths mentioned in Raise and Initiation. I don't want to get too technical here. To the general public, the significance of the term lies in the thought that they choose to stay. A master that is here on earth is choosing to stay and limit themselves because they've already gone beyond all of this. And as they work within this, they are so different. What they think, what they feel, what they sense is so different than the masses of humanity. I can only begin to understand what a sacrifice that is to stay. When you're vibrating at higher levels, it's natural to think that you just want to keep going and get out of here and go to better places than this mess down here. But they stay to serve and help within this mess to help uplift humanity. For the sake of men, they stay who are pressing forward on the wave of evolution. Now again, it's meditation is the path. It's samadhi and kriya yoga are the paths. And that's how they reach their goal, which is a thing not so often comprehended. And it's not just those little meditations in the Dhyana books. Those are preliminary meditation practices. Somebody compiled all the meditations and put it in a PDF file, and I have that, and I've reviewed it. All those meditations are the beginning training for samadhi practice. And that makes sense because everybody in the Dhyana books, except for I think one or two, were working on the first and second initiations. All that is training in pratyahara, dharana, and a little bit of dhyana as we move primarily through concentration exercises of the mind, not yet into samadhi practice here. So through soul magic or white magic then, we're also at the third and fourth initiations learning to manipulate thought matter. We can only do that, first of all, if we understand our thoughts. That's a lot of what Savitarka Samadhi is about. It's more of a sense of, again, you have the I-ness. I am looking at my thoughts, not just watching them pass by like clouds in the sky. That would be more down here. But I am looking at my thoughts in such a way I'm comprehending and understanding where those thoughts came from. It's kind of like those of you that are familiar with Krishnamurti, encouraging people to see the conditioning that brought those thoughts into the first place, into your brain, the program that was put into your brain, so to speak. And as you free yourself from that program, which starts to happen more and more in Savichara, this is Savitarka, Savichara is next, those break up those thoughts, that conditioning. And the thoughts get to the point where they don't even seem like thoughts as you're at that level. It's almost like you're not thinking at that level. But at that level, you can start to do the soul magic and you can start to work on what you think and why you think it and choose what you think. And that's work on the mental bodies. Now, it also says the masters work on the mental bodies of the race. What that means is the Bailey books emphasize over and over, and actually so does the Theosophical tradition from Blavatsky, etc. I put that in a previous video, that masters, they only work in the realm of thought. And they only work with those who are third and fourth degree initiates who are the thinkers of the race, who influence humanity with their thoughts outwardly. So most people that think they're in touch with masters, who can't even get their physical lives together, who can't control their emotions, who don't know how to control their minds at all, aren't in touch with masters at all. Who are ineffectual in the world, they're not in touch with masters. Who are desiring to be in touch with a master so they can be somebody important and channel a teaching that is important, they're not in touch with masters. Masters are only in touch with those who are very evolved and who are usually behind the scenes in physical bodies, third and fourth degree initiates, influencing the influential thinkers of humanity. And that's something to really consider here and keep in mind. So we've reached the end of this video. We have one more video and we are done with our understanding of Group 10. And again, These videos are available only for a short time on the YouTube channel. Then they go into the archives at patreon.com/soul to spirit. You get so many benefits if you become a patron. I really encourage you to go over there and look at what you get. And we have about 200 videos now and a lot of teachings and a lot of extra perks as well for you there.